Okay, so this time you've brought us some pretty interesting stuff, all about the land and production side of the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, really crucial stuff, even if most people don't see it day to day.
Definitely an engine of the whole industry. So we've got some material from EAG Inc., their website info on land administration outsourcing.
Right?
And we also have this article, Production Reporting Made Easy with EAG, all about streamlining regulatory compliance in oil and gas.
That's interesting.
It should be. And so the goal for this deep dive is, we want to kind of cut through some of the complexity of this material, really extract what's important, what's going to be useful for everybody listening to understand.
For sure.
So we're on this mission, right, to break down these challenges, land administration, production reporting, all that. And we want to see if these specialized services really offer solutions or if it's all hype.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right in. Let's start talking about land administration.
Okay.
So from what I saw on EAG Inc.'s website, land administration covers a lot of ground.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's, just on their website, they list like a bunch of core functions.
Right.
And it starts with the real basics, like setting up those land agreements. And then obviously you have to manage them over time.
Yeah.
It's not just set it and forget it.
Right.
And a big one they talk about is managing all the obligations and payments.
Oh, yeah.
Think about those as like the promises a company makes, when they're getting those rights to the land.
Okay. Makes sense.
And they emphasize the calendars too, for recommendations and expirations.
Huh.
Missing a date on those, that can really cost you.
I can only imagine. I mean, missing an expiration or a payment, that could be a huge financial and operational headache.
Yeah, big time.
And then the scope of it, right?
Yeah.
And they're also handling the payments, the actual processing, doing the mailings, and all the reporting.
Oh, so many reports.
Acreage, expiration, lease data sheets, bonuses, even 1099s for taxes. And of course, GIS mapping, right? Bringing in the visuals for all that land data.
It's amazing when you think about the level of detail involved.
Yeah.
Like imagine a company, they've got hundreds, maybe even thousands of leases. Each one of those has its own terms, its own obligations, maybe tied to, how much they produce or by when they have to develop the land. Each lease has its own payment schedule for royalties and fees.
Oh.
Managing all that, making sure it's all accurate and keeping everything on track. It could be a full-time job or, several full-time jobs.
Easily. So that leads to the big question, right? Why would a company choose to outsource these important parts of their business?
Right.
EAG's website does give some good reasons, like making sure your land data is actually accurate and reliable. That seems pretty fundamental.
For sure. That's like the base of the pyramid.
Totally. But then they go deeper, talking about getting those deeper insights into things like, let's say, shut-in wells.
Okay, yeah.
So those are the wells that are not producing right now.
All right.
And also getting a handle on your current obligations and, the full acreage you're managing. So it's not just about record keeping.
Get bigger than that.
It's about being able to make smarter decisions about your strategy, your whole business.
Exactly.
Like say you analyze, really dig deep into the data of past shut-in wells.
Okay.
Maybe you see some patterns. Maybe it's related to certain types of geological formations or how they were operating the wells.
Interesting.
And that could help you, figure out where to drill next or whether to reactivate some of those wells.
Right. Using that data to drive real decisions.
Right.
That's the key. When you can really see with clarity what your land situation is, what commitments you have, it puts you in a much better position to make those tough calls. Like, where to drill next or whether to buy or sell certain properties.
Yeah.
Even how to get the most out of the wells you already have.
Makes sense. So EAG also mentions that by outsourcing these tasks, it frees up a company's internal teams to focus on growth instead of getting bogged down in all this administration.
Yeah. Focus your energy where it makes the biggest impact.
Right. Play to your strengths. And it looks like EAG works with all kinds of companies, smaller ones, big public companies.
Right.
So they must be pretty adaptable to handle all these different needs. I'm curious, though, are these the biggest struggles for oil and gas companies when it comes to land administration, or are there other things they're dealing with that maybe weren't on that list?
That's a great question. The services EAG talked about do hit on a lot of the big challenges.
Right.
But, there's always more to it. Like working with other companies on joint operating agreements, those can be tricky.
Yeah.
And then you've got the regulations, all the rules about how you can use the land, environmental stuff. That's a whole other layer of complexity.
Oh, of course.
And mineral rights, those can be split up in all sorts of ways, especially in some areas. It can get really messy.
Really?
But even with all that, the core administrative work, tracking the leases, the obligations, the payments, that's always going to be there.
Gotcha. So it sounds like what EG is offering is a way to handle that constant pressure.
Right. They take on that burden so you can focus on other things.
Okay. And their approach, at least from what they describe on their website, sounds pretty thorough.
I guess, yeah.
They start by analyzing all the client's documentation,
Right.
looking for any inconsistencies. And you can imagine with some of these agreements going back years, there's bound to be some discrepancies.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then they come up with ways to fix those issues. What really stood out to me is that they say they manage these assets as if they were their own.
Yeah, that's a good sign. Shows they take it seriously.
It does. It makes you think they're really invested in getting it right.
So whether it's setting up those brand new leases, making those crucial obligation payments on time, getting new wells up and running, or sorting out the often confusing ownership structures of producing wells, they seem to be aiming for, like, full support across the board for land administration.
That's a lot to cover. And I guess when you think about how complicated it is just to manage the agreements, it's not really a surprise that tracking and reporting what's actually coming out of those wells, that production reporting, has its own whole set of challenges.
Yeah, you're going from the legal side to the operational side. Makes sense that there would be some new wrinkles to iron out.
Right. And that's where the Production Reporting Made Easy article comes in. It really drives home the point that accurate production reporting isn't just some bureaucratic box to check.
Right.
It's essential. If you want to run your operations well, make smart decisions, use your resources wisely, and obviously stay on the right side of the law.
And the thing that jumps out at me is how interconnected everything is. Like, the article kind of hints at this, but production reporting is right at the center of everything. You've got your day-to-day operations, your financial side, and all those regulatory agencies.
Oh, yeah, there are a lot of eyes on those reports.
Exactly. So if there's a mistake or something's not reported on time, it can cause a chain reaction of problems.
Like a domino effect.
Exactly. You could end up paying the wrong amount of royalties, getting hit with fines, even making bad decisions because you're working with bad data.
It really highlights how important accuracy is. And the article does a good job of laying out those pressure points, the things that trip companies up.
It does.
Like just the sheer volume of data, right? From all the different wells, the different formations. Then you've got to make sure all the reports are consistent, whether it's production volumes, revenue, those regulatory filings.
Right, keeping it all straight.
Exactly. And on top of that, the reporting requirements are constantly changing, so you've got to stay up to date. And, of course, you need people with the right expertise to handle all of this.
It sounds overwhelming, to be honest.
It does. And the stats they share in the article really paint a picture of how big this challenge is. Something like 68% of mid-sized oil and gas companies, they're spending over 120 hours each month just on production recording.
Wow, that's a lot of time.
It is. And then almost 40% of them are making significant errors every quarter. That tells you this isn't just a minor annoyance.
Right.
These mistakes have a real impact on their bottom line.
Absolutely. And for listeners, that's a key takeaway. You might have areas in your own operations where a closer look at your reporting could be beneficial.
You're right. It's worth thinking about.
Yeah. Because when you're not compliant, or you're paying the wrong amount of royalties, or you're making decisions based on faulty data, you're losing money.
It all adds up. So how does EAG Services deal with all of this? The article makes them out to be this company that combines industry experience with some pretty innovative solutions.
Yeah, it's not like they're just selling generic software or giving high-level advice. The article really stresses that they understand the whole upstream value chain.
What does that mean exactly?
Basically, they get how production reporting connects to every other part of oil and gas operations. It's not just a siloed thing. They bring together the tech side with their software and tools, but they also have a team of seasoned land administration professionals.
Okay.
These are people who have worked in the industry, who really know the ins and outs of regulatory compliance, data management, and production operations. That human element, that real-world experience, seems like it's a big part of what sets them apart.
I see. So they're not just relying on algorithms.
Right. It's a blend of technology and expertise.
And there's a quote from James Thornton in the article. He's a former VP of operations. He says that EAG goes beyond just helping you file those reports.
Okay.
They actually help you build systems that connect your production data to real business intelligence.
Interesting.
So it's about turning all that data into something you can actually use to make better decisions for your business.
That's a big shift. It's
Yeah.
not just about checking the compliance box.
Exactly. And then the article breaks down EAG's approach, how they actually do this, and it's pretty comprehensive.
It is, yeah. They're thinking about both the short term and the long term. Like, you need to be compliant right now. That's urgent.
Right.
But you also want to set yourself up for success in the future.
So it's a balancing act.
Right. And they start with this process assessment and optimization phase.
Okay.
It's like, you can't improve something if you don't really understand it. Right. So they dig into your existing workflows. They figure out where the bottlenecks are, where the risks for noncompliance might be hiding, and where you could use automation to make things more efficient.
It's like taking a deep dive into your own processes.
Exactly. And the article even mentions that these assessments can often lead to a 40% reduction in reporting time.
Wow, that's a huge time savings.
It is. And then the next step is system integration and data management.
Okay.
This is where they deal with the fact that a lot of oil and gas companies have all these different systems that don't talk to each other.
Ah, the data silos.
Yeah, exactly. So EAG comes in and creates these smoother, more automated data flows.
I see.
The goal is to get rid of, or at least minimize, manual data entry, which is where a lot of errors happen. And they want to create this single source of truth for all your production data.
Makes sense. And that single source of truth, it's not just about having some fancy dashboards.
Right.
We're talking about integrating all those layers of data. Production volumes, uptime, how the equipment's performing, even market prices. That way, you can do some really sophisticated analysis.
Yeah, find ways to optimize your production, catch potential problems early on. It could be a game changer.
It could. So then we've got the regulatory expertise and compliance management side of things.
Right, because the regulations are always changing, right? You got state rules, federal rules, sometimes even local rules, and they can overlap and contradict each other. It's a lot to keep track of.
It sounds like a minefield.
It can be.
Yeah.
So having a team that's dedicated to staying on top of all that must be incredibly valuable.
Especially if you're expanding into new areas or the rules change in your existing areas.
Exactly. Having that expert knowledge can save you a lot of time, money, and legal headaches down the road. And the article also talked about their full-service outsourcing options.
Right. That makes sense for companies who want to focus on what they do best, their core operations.
Yeah, they don't want to build and manage a whole department just for reporting.
So it's like getting that specialized expertise without all the overhead. And I thought it was interesting that they also emphasized training and knowledge transfer.
Oh yeah, that was a nice touch. It's not just about doing the work for you. It's about teaching your team how to do it better.
So it's not a black box. They're not hiding their methods.
Right, they're empowering their clients to be more self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And then to show that it actually works, the article gives a couple of case studies.
Yeah, real-world examples are always helpful. Let's start with that mid-size operator in the Permian Basin.
Okay.
The results they got were pretty impressive. They cut their reporting time by 65%. That's a huge efficiency boost.
That's massive.
And maybe even more important, they didn't have a single regulatory penalty for 2 years straight.
Wow.
Before they started working with EAG, they were averaging $120,000 a year in penalties. So that's a big financial win right there.
Absolutely. It's not just about doing things right, it's about saving real money. And they also improved their data accuracy by 30%, and they were able to identify underperforming assets much better.
That makes sense. With better data, you get better insights.
Exactly. And then there's the second case study, the multi-state natural gas producer.
Yeah.
They had some pretty significant improvements as well.
They did. They managed to increase their well count by a whopping 300% without adding any staff.
Wow, that's incredible.
That shows how scalable and efficient their system became, and they were able to standardize their reporting across 4 different states.
So they're streamlining their operations, even with all that complexity.
Exactly. Plus, they got their monthly close time down from 15 days to just 7,
Nice.
and they improved the quality of their data for reserves and economic modeling.
Again, real tangible benefits. It really hammers home that having a solid production reporting system isn't just a nice to have.
It's essential, especially for a growing company. And the article goes on to talk about how the strategic benefits go beyond just compliance.
Right, it's not just about avoiding penalties.
Exactly. When your production data is accurate and it's flowing smoothly through your organization, it makes decision-making better at every level, from the day-to-day operations to the long-term strategy stuff.
Makes sense. Everyone's working from the same playbook.
Exactly. And it also impacts your financial performance, right?
Yeah.
Because you're less likely to make mistakes with revenue, royalties, and taxes.
Oh yeah, those can be costly errors. And it frees up your skilled people, the ones who really know their stuff, so they can focus on analysis and planning instead of getting bogged down in data entry.
That's a great point. And then the article mentions that having clean and accurate historical data is a huge advantage if you're thinking about mergers, acquisitions, or selling off
Right. It
assets.
makes the whole process smoother and builds trust.
Right. So towards the end, the article outlines a recommended approach for implementing a top-notch production reporting system.
It's a pretty structured process, which is helpful when you're dealing with something this complex.
Totally. So step one, you assess where you're at right now,
Right.
you understand your current processes, identify the weak spots, and figure out what needs to improve.
Makes sense.
Then you develop a strategic roadmap. What are your goals and how are you going to get there?
Right. A clear plan of action.
Then, of course, you have to implement those changes. That could mean bringing in new technology, changing how you do things, or outsourcing certain tasks.
And the final piece, which is so important, is to build in a system for continuous improvement.
So you're not just setting it and forgetting it.
Exactly. You're always looking for ways to make it better and adapt to changes in the industry. And there's this great quote from Elizabeth Henderson in the article.
Okay.
She says that companies need to stop thinking of production reporting as just this burden they have to deal with.
It's more than just a chore.
Right. They need to see it as a key part of their operations and a valuable source of business intelligence.
It's about changing your perspective.
Exactly. And when you make that shift, that's when you can unlock the real strategic value of production reporting.
It's about seeing the opportunity, not just the obligation. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's clear that both land administration and production reporting are pretty complex areas.
They are, and they can be a real headache for oil and gas companies.
But this material suggests that specialized outsourcing, like what EAG offers, can bring a lot of benefits.
It can. We're talking about more accurate data, more efficient operations, better compliance, and better decision-making.
Right. And if you really master these things, they can become strategic assets for your company, not just burdens to deal with.
Exactly. It's about turning those challenges into opportunities.
I like that. So for everyone listening, here's something to think about.
Okay.
Could taking a deeper look at your land data and production reporting reveal some hidden efficiencies in your organization?
Interesting.
Could it give you a clearer picture for planning your strategy? And could it ultimately help you make smarter decisions in this constantly changing energy sector?
Those are great questions. Definitely worth exploring.
I think so too. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.